Greetings and welcome to the basement. In this quick focused video, we're going to be taking a look at GitHub and specifically getting the Unity project set up in GitHub. Now, this is not going to be the smoothest or simplest or most direct way, I should say, of doing this. That would be the command line. But if you know how to use Git's command line, you don't need this video. This is for the people that are not familiar with the command line and they're just primarily casual users of GitHub, not advanced users of GitHub. Okay, disclaimers out of the way. Let's get going. You will, of course, need to have a GitHub account. I'm not going to go through signing up for that. It's a pretty standard account sign up procedure. Give it an email, give it a password, do some confirmations, and bamf, you are in. The other thing that you are going to want to have is you're going to want to have the GitHub Desktop client installed. Just go to desktop.github.com. There you go. You've got a download for Windows button. You also have a download for Macs button right here as well. Sorry, if there is a Linux version of this, I don't know about it, but I'm sure there's plenty of Git clients out there for Linux. Of course, if you are one of my students, then yeah, the Windows version's fine because that's what we have installed on all of the machines in our computer labs. The first thing I need to do after you're signed in, you'll see something similar to this, is create a new repository. So you'll have this nice little new button here on the left-hand side, at which point we can name this, which I will name this. Very uplifting name here. I did not, okay, I did not click on that. Random clicks, don't like them. No, I don't. Okay, apparently I did click on that. I don't even know what a turbo octo engine would be. Sort of curious to write one now. In any case, I have my uplifting name here. It does not like spaces. So if you do attempt to put in a space, it's going to automatically put in hyphen. Description, you can give it optional. I would recommend it if you are making this public, which, speaking of, you can make things public or private. I am going to make this private, not that this is going to live very long for reasons unknown to me. If you are a student creating this for a student project, I would strongly recommend that you make this private so that way other students can't accidentally stumble upon it. Yes, happen. If you are making this public, I would recommend you initialize it with a README. I mean, that's just a polite thing to do. And I would also strongly advise you to choose a license. I'm personally fond of the MIT license when it comes to gaming projects. On that note, make sure you actually understand, at least at a base level, what these licenses are. These are legal documents, and you are specifying legally who can do what with your work. Understand what you are doing here. Don't understand, it is honestly best to leave the license to none. Okay, now this .gitignore, you do not want to ignore the .ignore file. Why? Unity produces a whole bunch of just generated garbage files. You do not want to be committing these to the repository. It just slows things down and clutters things up. And so here, you're going to want to select that, type in Unity, select it, and there we go, add.gitignore Unity. This prevents things like the library folder and other miscellaneous generated files from being added to the repository because they're generated files. They don't need to be added in. All right. Great repository. My glorious repository is now created. It's also completely useless because at the moment, it only exists in one spot, and that is on GitHub servers. Just to be useful, it's got to exist on my machine. That is where this comes into play. As you can see, I've already been playing around with this a little bit, so yeah, ignore that. It doesn't exist. Okay. So we've got our client here, and what we're going to do is we are going to clone this repository to our computer. Now, what I want to do is just sort of as a point of practice is I'm going to import in this work scene. I've got like a cheap little skeleton asset pack in here, so that way I've got some files in here. Largely irrelevant to the demonstration, but here we go. I've got recording project. This is what I want to put into source control. I'm going to come over here to my client. I'm going to go to File. I'm going to clone a repository. And of course, you will need to sign in before you see any of this. And here we go. Here's my repository. Now, where is it going to try to create this? Now, notice here, if I try to put it in Unity, it yells at me. This folder contains files. Git can only clone to empty files. Means if I try to put it into recording project, no, wrong, yelling at me. Because chances are you did name your repository the same as your project name. So how can we fix this? Well, first of all, I'm going to close Unity because I don't actually want Unity open for this part. What I typically do is I will come into here, and after I have created the Unity project, I will come in here and I will just call it .old, and then clone to this path. So Unity recording project, clone. Okay, it's been cloned. And now under current repository, of course, if it's the only one that you have, of course, it'll just automatically be there. But if you've got more than one, well, first of all, you probably don't need the video. But you can use this here to select which repository you are looking at. There we go. I am on Delete Me Please now, and I can see that recording project as a .git and a .gitignore file. Leave this .ignore file alone unless you know what you're doing. Also helps highlight the fact that this folder name and this repository name do not have to match. It is irrelevant. So what is my next step? Well, I'm going to come into here where all of my actual Unity stuff exists. And I'm going to do a Control-A, Control-C, go back over here, go into where my repository is, Control-V, dump it in, twiddle my thumbs, make a sandwich, desperately try to fill the empty time here. This is also, by the way, why you want to wait and to do this when you've got less stuff in your project. Now, I strongly suspect that due to the fact that I've got 5,000 items in here, and there's no way that skeleton generated 5,000 items worth of stuff in my assets folder, I do strongly suspect that a lot of those are leftovers from other recording projects that I have done. But regardless, once this finishes, we'll move on to the next step. Done, yay, it's done. Okay, so we just moved over a hell of a lot of files. So let's go see what this says. Oh, 46 changed files. That's a few less than the 5,000 that the File Explorer told me it was moving over. That is why we had the .ignore file. The .ignore file is ignoring those 5,000-ish useless files and instead going, oh, these are the actual asset files. Okay, now, source control acts on a commit, push, pull pattern. I have changes. First thing I need to do is I need to commit those changes. I have to put a summary. If you're working in a group, or even if you're not, I would really advise you to put a description in here. Commit to master. It is going to go through and figure out a delta between what was the old and what is the new. Now, that change does not exist on GitHub servers yet. In order for the changes to exist on the server and for other members of the team to see them if you are working in a team environment, you must push. So I am going to push the files. Oh, hello, I love working from home. There's the telephone. So I'm going to push those changes out. And now those changes are visible to everybody. Go over here to the web now. This is what it looked like when I created it. I hit the F5 key to reload it, and bam, there we go. I've got stuff. Now, if I had other people on this project, they would be able to see this. The pull part, actually I should say fetch pull, this is mainly for when you're working in a group setting. When you sit down to do your changes for the day, you always want to fetch your source. This goes out and manually queries the server. It's like, yo, server, are there changes? And if the server says, yes, there's changes, you'll then be able to pull those changes down to your local version. That is very important. Sit down to work, fetch, pull if necessary, make your changes, you commit those changes, and you push those changes. And that is the lightning fast, bare bones way of using GitHub as source control for Unity. If you found this video useful, well, a like would be appreciated. And if this was a boring waste of time and nothing useful was gained, well, the dislike button is right next to it. Until next time.